Hey guys, tonight we drift out into the dark, glassy vastness of the Pacific Ocean. No compass, no GPS, not even a reliable constellation in sight. Just you, a canoe made from hollowed, outbred fruit wood, and a group of sunburned paddlers who somehow believe you can navigate to another island hundreds of miles away. Spoiler alert, you probably won't survive this if you weren't trained from birth to read wave angles and cloud shapes like ancient scrolls. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, post your location and what time it is there. I love seeing how far this sleepy cruise stretches. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You squat low in the canoe as the shoreline shrinks behind you, its palm fronds swaying a lazy farewell. There's no fanfare, no dramatic send-off, just the rhythmic thump of paddles in water and the quiet creak of lashings holding the outrigger in place. Around you, nothing but ocean. The water is an impossible shade of blue, like staring into infinity with a sunburn. Your mentor, let's call him Tua, sits near the front. He's been quiet for hours. He doesn't need to talk. The voyage began the moment the tide turned, and now you're in the hands of the ocean. Not metaphorically, literally. You'll need to survive on everything the sea offers: food, direction, even hope. The first surprise is how wrong your brain is about direction. The sun rises, but doesn't stay in the same place. The swells come from different angles, and clouds race across the sky like gossiping village kids. After an hour, you already feel lost. Tua hasn't looked back once. This is how your ancestors did it. The Polynesians, sailors without sails, cartographers without paper, navigators without north. They settled a region stretching across 10 million square miles, from Hawaii to New Zealand to Easter Island. Historians still argue whether they reached South America before Columbus reached anywhere. But one thing's certain, these guys were the original ocean hackers. A sudden gust of wind slaps your face, and you taste the salt thick in the air. It's the ocean saying, pay attention. You try, but every direction looks identical. Sky, water, cloud. Nothing stands out until Tua points ahead. You squint, still nothing. Then you notice it. The color of the sea has shifted. It's a deeper blue. No, maybe a softer one. The wind smells less fishy. You're probably imagining things. Or maybe not. Your first night at sea feels like camping in a waterbed with no bottom. Stars blink overhead like judgmental little eyes. You thought you'd use them for direction, but clouds smother the sky. So, you lie back and try to feel the canoe move. It tilts, barely perceptible. Is that the swell? Is it telling you something? Tua mutters something about lapa. You whisper it back, trying the syllables on your tongue like a secret password. He's talking about underwater lightning, streaks of light that some say show up before landfall. Scientists still debate if tilapa is real. Some call it bioluminescence. Others say it's electric fields in seawater. But the old navigators, they believe in it like you believe in gravity. As the stars vanish behind more cloud, you listen to the water slap against the hull. You can almost hear a rhythm. Is that the canoe's motion? Or is the sea sending you Morse code in swell form? Tua smiles. Maybe you're starting to get it. By morning, you haven't slept, and your back is sore. Welcome to ancient navigation. Your reward? A faint smudge on the horizon. Could be a cloud. Could be a mirage. Could be land. You don't celebrate yet. There's no GPS dot to confirm anything. Just your gut, your memory, and the same clues your ancestors relied on: smell, sound, and the color of the water. Your hands are raw, your mouth tastes like regret and seaweed, and yet part of you starts to trust the process. Maybe not the whole process, let's not get carried away, but enough to paddle on. You catch Tua smiling. Not at you. He's too cool for that. But at the sea, that same sea that carried his ancestors, whispering secrets only the patient can hear. The smudge on the horizon doesn't vanish, which is your first clue it might actually be land. But it doesn't get closer either. It just hovers, mocking you. By mid-morning, your arms ache from paddling and your brain feels like it's been fried in salt spray and sunlight. And yet, Tua calmly reaches into the canoe's storage bundle and pulls out what looks like a tangled mess of twigs and string. This is your first real look at a stick chart. It's not a chart in the map of Europe sense. It's a riddle. A palm, rib frame, with curved rods bending across the skeleton like a spider web after a typhoon. At first, it makes zero sense. There are shells knotted onto it in certain spots. Tiny, bleached, white cowries like cereal mascots. Tua holds it gently, like he's afraid it'll melt in the sun. These stick charts, or Rebelib and Matang as they're known in the Marshall Islands, are less maps and more memories. The bent sticks represent swell patterns, how waves bounce off islands, echo around atolls, and cross each other in recognizable rhythms. The shells don't mark islands necessarily. Sometimes they're swells colliding. Sometimes they're reference points. Sometimes they're just there to remind the navigator of a story. You trace your finger along one curve. It doesn't go from point A to B. It loops like spaghetti. Tua taps one arc and says something about swell interference. Your mind flashes back to physics class, the part you slept through. Apparently, these guys figured out wave diffraction and refraction before Newton was a glimmer in the apple tree's eye. Stick charts were never carried on voyages. Too fragile. Too sacred. They were memorized. Think of them as the ocean's version of musical notation. A score that teaches you how the sea will behave, not where it will take you. The chart you're holding now, it's a training tool, not a treasure map. Historians still argue whether the charts were symbolic, mnemonic, or literal. Some say they were like dream catchers, tools to train the subconscious. Others insist they were precise instruments, updated over generations. Either way, they were passed down orally, from master to apprentice, sometimes over decades. You ask Tua if he made this one. He chuckles and shakes his head. Too young, he says. You blink. Tua's at least 70. Midday sun beats down as you try to reconcile the idea of using a driftwood dream catcher to navigate 800 miles of open water. But the more you stare at it, the more you feel a kind of rhythm in the curves. A dance. One that mimics the canoe's motion as it rolls over the swells. Back in the day, families would train their children to feel this from toddler age. Babies rocked in cradles tuned to the ocean. Children blindfolded in the canoe to learn the talk of the water. And yes, some were literally tested by being taken far offshore and asked to find their way back. You're not there yet, but maybe, just maybe, your balance is starting to shift. Your body is learning to interpret the cues your brain can't yet name. Tua carefully bundles the chart away, tucking it under cloth and twine like a grandmother saving a family recipe. He doesn't say anything, but you feel the lesson settling in. The smudge on the horizon grows slightly, or maybe the clouds shift. Hard to say. What's not hard to say is that your stomach's now convinced you're hallucinating breadfruit and pork. The ocean offers no menace, just seaweed and hope. You pass the time scanning the water for anything odds, floating coconuts, foam lines, even driftwood. Anything that could mean you're approaching something solid. The stick chart's magic lingers in your mind. You try to imagine a future version of you carving one out of memory, teaching a skeptical kid how to read the sea like a song. By late afternoon, you finally admit it, the smudge is land. A low atoll, barely visible above sea level, but unmistakable in how the waves bend and wrap around it. You recognize the pattern now, not just from the chart, but from the way the canoe rocks slightly left, then bobs up as a new swell joins the party. The crew relaxes a little. Not that you're stopping there. This is just a checkpoint, but it means your mental map is working. Tua nods slightly. High praise from him. The sun begins to dip, turning the water into molten gold. You think about those ancient navigators again. How they ventured out without any guarantee of return. How they turned a mess of palm twigs into a lifeline. And you feel it now, as you roll into the path of the next swell. The chart isn't a map. It's a memory, a story told by the ocean. One you're finally starting to understand. The next morning, you wake up with your cheek stuck to the wooden hull and the sound of waves humming like a drumbeat beneath your bones. You're starting to understand what they mean when they say the ocean talks. It doesn't shout. It murmurs, constantly, rhythmically, with subtle shifts in tone and tempo that most people sleep through. But not you, not anymore. Tua is already awake, of course. He's sitting still, eyes half closed, like he's meditating, but his fingers twitch in time with the motion of the canoe. You realize he's listening. Not with his ears, but with his whole body. You sit up slowly and try to do the same. The canoe isn't moving forward in a straight line. It's rocking, bobbing, and rolling in what feels like a set pattern. A large swell lifts the vessel gently, then a smaller, crosswise ripple nudges it slightly to starboard. Then again. It's like a metronome you can ride. These wave patterns are the Polynesian secret code. Swells travel for thousands of miles across the Pacific. Some are birthed from Antarctic storms, others by distant hurricanes. They arrive in consistent, directional sets, like invisible roads laid across the sea. The trick is to feel the difference between them. You lie back again and shut your eyes, tuning out everything but the roll of the hull. You can almost isolate them now. The long period swell from the south, the choppier interference from the east. Tua calls it wave piloting. It's a full body sensory experience, somewhere between balance and intuition. Historians still argue whether Polynesian navigators could track multiple wave systems simultaneously. Some skeptics claim it's impossible. Others point to modern experiments, like those done on the Hawaiian canoe Hakalika, where navigators did exactly that, reaching their destination across open ocean with no instruments, guided purely by swell memory. Tua throws a question at you, sudden and sharp. What are we riding now? You fumble through your mental notes. Southern swell long and slow. You guess. He grins. And you pause. There's a slight slap from the side. One chop from northeast. He nods, then adds, and under that, you freeze. There's more. Apparently, yes. Beneath the dominant wave patterns, there are subtle resonances. Echoes of swells reflected off distant island chains. Ghost roads leading to places you haven't yet imagined. The canoe picks them up like a wooden tuning fork. Some navigators reportedly could track these shifts in pitch and rhythm even while asleep. Their bodies trained to wake when the swell changed direction. Like a sailor's sixth sense. Your brain, still stuck in the digital age, is kind of freaking out. This is navigation through resonance, vibration, embodied memory. No need for compasses or clocks, just the ocean's constant percussion, and the ability to dance with it. Midday hits, and the sun transforms the water into liquid mirror. No land in sight, no birds overhead, just wave after wave beneath, but you no longer feel lost. The ocean isn't empty, it's textured. It's speaking, and you're starting to pick up the grammar. Tua asks you to close your eyes again. You obey. The canoe's roll becomes your language lesson. A long pull, a short slap, a moment of balance. Then repeat. You find you can track direction without looking. Left swell is growing stronger. You're veering. Correction needed. You tap the rudder with your heel. Slight angle shift. Balance returns. Tua doesn't say anything. He just hums softly, a chant older than memory. It's not for you. It's for the sea. Late afternoon, and the clouds begin to stretch and drift, forming shapes that somehow look like islands. You glance nervously at each one. Tua smiles. Don't trust your eyes, he says. Trust your hips? You almost laugh. That's ridiculous. But he's serious. The canoe tells the truth. Your body has learned to read it, even when your brain wants to be fooled by mirages. You start feeling like you're part of the vessel now. Not a passenger, not even a crew member, but an organ in its living body. You feel the push and pull of the ocean as feedback, not noise. You adjust instinctively. And suddenly, you know the swells have changed. You whisper this to Tua. He nods, silent approval. A new swell, subtler, deeper. It's joined the pattern. It's coming from the northwest, a signal of distant weather. Could mean land, could mean storm. Tua adjusts the course, barely a few degrees. You feel it before you see it. The way the swell aligns more harmoniously with your motion. The canoe glides smoother, almost like it's breathing easier. Evening falls with no fanfare, just a slow fading of light and color. The sky turns to velvet. No stars tonight either. Clouds again. But it doesn't matter. You have the swell under you, the pattern in your bones, and a chant in your ears. And tonight, the ocean feels like it's leading you home. You wake with a jolt, not from a nightmare, but from the sudden, jarring absence of motion. For a moment, the canoe is dead still. Then, just as quickly, a soft breeze stirs the sail, and you're back to rocking gently in time with the waves. But the pause leaves you unsettled, like the sea held its breath to see if you were paying attention. Tua's already moving, muttering to himself as he unrolls a sliver of tapa cloth and sniffs the air like a sommelier evaluating a rare wine. You follow his lead and sniff too. Salt, of course. Always salt. But there's something else, lighter, almost floral. You lick your finger and hold it to the wind, pretending like you know what you're doing. Tua snorts. No finger. Use your skin. You stare at him blankly. He means your whole body. The wind doesn't just blow. It carries information. About moisture, temperature, even the kinds of vegetation lying hundreds of miles away. Your skin becomes a barometer, a wind vane, and a distant nose all at once. Polynesians navigated not just by stars or swells, but by the feel and smell of wind. They learned that certain winds consistently preceded landfall, while others hinted at storms. The trade winds, the doldrums, the katabatic gusts from island slopes at night, all of them told stories. You lean into the breeze, letting it calm your hair and whisper through your ears. It's faint, but there's a shift in humidity, a touch of pollen maybe. You think you're imagining it, but Tua's already adjusting the course again. So you trust your instincts and the hairs on your arms that now stand like curious antennae. Historians still argue how much of this was skill versus poetic guesswork. Some suggest navigators used these signs as confirmation of what they already suspected from swells or birds. Others believe entire routes were plotted based on scent and wind behavior. Either way, modern sailors with barometers and wind vanes are still getting out, navigated by barefoot elders in outrigger canoes. By midday, the breeze strengthens, and the sail catches more confidently. You feel the canoe surge, as if saying, yes, this way. The air is cooler now, and every so often, a sudden gust dips the hull, low enough to kiss the sea's surface. You brace instinctively, already reading its rhythm like a second language. Tua hands you a scrap of dried pandanus leaf. What's this for? You ask. He points at the horizon. Look. You squint. Nothing but haze. Then, slowly, a vertical smear of color forms. A thin cloud column. You hold the pandanus up to it like a measuring tool. Tua nods. Island wind cloud. Very far. Very real. These clouds, known to old navigators as Nalaini, form when moist air hits land, rising and cooling to create vertical stacks. They often linger over islands too small to see from sea level. Your eyes alone would have missed it. But the wind, it already told you. The sensation of sailing toward a phantom becomes weirdly comforting. The wind strengthens, steady and sure, filling the sail with a sound like deep breathing. You begin to trust its consistency, even if you can't see the destination yet. The sun begins to dip, casting the sky in orange and indigo. Tua teaches you a chant, not for the sea this time, but for the wind. A rhythmic whisper that's half prayer, half weather report. You repeat it, trying not to mangle the pronunciation. He grins. Good enough for a mainlander. You laugh, even though you're technically at least 1,000 miles from any mainland. As night falls, the clouds blanket the stars again. No celestial help, just the feel of air brushing against your cheek, your arms, your neck. You realize how rarely in your regular life you noticed wind, unless it knocked something over or ruined your hair. Now, it's your guide. You're learning that the sea doesn't shout direction at you. It hums it. And the wind? It writes that melody across your skin. You just have to be quiet enough to listen. Your body, sunburnt and sore, still buzzes with the rhythm of the day's movement. You lie back under the woven mat, the sail creaking softly above, and feel the breath of the earth moving steadily across your face. It no longer feels like nature is outside of you. It feels like you've plugged in, and tonight, the wind tells you, keep going, you're almost there. Dawn crawls up the sky in slow, honey-colored tendrils, and you're already awake, still pretending not to be. Tua's up too, quietly rinsing his hands over the side of the canoe, like he's making a small offering. You stretch, your back cracking like an old floorboard, and glance around. The sky is clear, finally. But your eyes are drawn down, not up. There, in the rising light, a single cloud formation floats above the sea. It's not moving with the others. Not even a little. Suspiciously still, suspiciously vertical. Tua nods toward it, his face unreadable. That's land. You squint, but you don't see any land. Just that solitary cloud, puffed up like a jellyfish hanging above an invisible reef. Turns out, clouds don't just decorate the sky. They tattle. Low-lying islands, especially atolls, don't break the horizon until you're frustratingly close. But the way moisture gathers and behaves above them, that's visible from 30, 40, even 50 miles away. Sometimes more. The heat from the land forces the moist air to rise in a distinctive column. If the wind is right, that column lingers, waits for you to notice it. Historians still argue how accurate this method really is. Some suggest it's only useful in perfectly still conditions. Others swear seasoned wayfinders could name the island just by looking at the cloud shape. Round for atolls, flat for larger land masses. As for you, you're trying to look wise while low-key Googling cloud types in your imagination. But Tua trusts it, and so you do too. The canoe creaks as you turn slightly toward the cloud. The new heading feels smoother. The swells flatten just a bit, and something else happens. You catch a faint, unmistakable whiff of earth. Not salt, not seaweed. Dirt? Wet, leafy dirt? It's subtle, but it slices through the brine like a memory of hiking boots and rainstorms. You check the horizon again. Still no island. But that cloud. It's now joined by a couple of shy neighbors. The invisible is starting to speak. Throughout the morning, the cloud gets denser. You notice it holds a slightly darker base than the ones around it. You'd read somewhere, probably during a bored scroll through climate conspiracy videos, that this darker underside can mean it's reflecting the forest canopy below. Turns out, that was kind of true. Meanwhile, the wind shifts just slightly, a tiny exhale from the west. Tua adjusts course again. He's reading not just where the cloud is, but how it's breathing. He mumbles, 2 more hours, maybe 3. You glance at the sail, trimmed to perfection, the ropes humming softly with tension. It's almost like the canoe is tightening its muscles, ready for a final sprint. You dip your hand into the water and feel the warmth change, a little less sting in the salt. Another clue. Then come the birds. Not many. Just a pair at first, long-winged and quick. Then another, smaller, twitcher one, skimming the surface like it owns the place. You recognize the black noddy, because Tua made you memorize it. A land, nesting bird that feeds at sea, but always comes home before dark. If it's out here mid-morning, its nest is nearby, and birds don't have time for your navigation doubts. You watch as they disappear into the direction of the cloud. It's not a fluke anymore. Still, the ocean isn't done testing you. By early afternoon, a haze rolls in, not thick fog, but just enough mist to blur your vision like a tired camera lens. The island could be right in front of you, but you wouldn't know. Tua taps your shoulder and points upward. You follow his finger. There, above the mist, a break in the cloud cover reveals the puffball still hanging motionless in the sky. Right above where the island should be, like it's holding the secret just out of reach. Navigation without compasses, without GPS, without even visible stars or land. It forces you into a strange kind of trust. Not blind faith, but embodied knowledge. Your fingers, your toes, your ears, they start to know things before your brain catches up. And right now, your whole body is screaming, it's there. As the haze thins and the sun slips lower, you finally see it a soft, uneven line against the horizon. Green, wavy, real. Land, you almost laugh. Not because you didn't believe, but because it worked. That lonely cloud, it kept its promise. Tua says nothing. He doesn't need to. His whole life has been built on this quiet accuracy. And now you've experienced it too. The canoe slides forward. The swell's gentle, almost respectful. You're close enough now to smell the flowers, the soil, the human warmth that comes from distant cooking fires. You take one last look at the sky. The cloud still lingers, a loyal beacon. It didn't shout. It waited. And you were finally quiet enough to listen. The island rises steadily now, no longer a phantom. Trees sharpen into jagged outlines. The scent of green things, wet leaves, fermenting fruit, and wood smoke grows stronger with every swell. But before you can enjoy that sweet sense of arrival, Tua grabs your shoulder and points not at the island, but at the sky. Birds. Lots of them. A wave of noddies soars overhead in a lazy V formation, flapping toward the shore. Just above them, frigate birds hang like black kites, barely flapping at all, just riding thermals like they own the air. Birds, it turns out, are more than just pretty winged distractions in Polynesian navigation. They're your living GPS units. Feathered compasses that won't stop tweeting directions, even when the stars bail on you. Tua explains without words, using simple gestures. He mimics a frigate bird's glide with one hand, then slices the air back toward the island with the other. Translation, those birds are heading home. And where birds go to roost, there's land. Guaranteed. Historically, Polynesians paid obsessive attention to bird behavior. They knew which species flew how far from land, when they left, how they circled, even how low they skimmed the waves. The black noddy, for instance. It rarely ventures more than 25 miles offshore. If it's darting around your canoe, you're practically knocking on the island's door. And then there's the Manio-Kate, or white tern. It's a dainty little cloud, puff of a bird that tends to fly out in the morning and return by late afternoon. Navigators would track its daily comings and goings to triangulate their position. Some accounts say they even launched trained birds, then followed their return flight like a fuzzy, squawking compass arrow. You look up again. One bird, small, white, probably a tern, flies out from the trees, then circles, glides, and returns. It does this twice more, like it's drawing invisible circles in the air. Tua's eyes follow its path. You realize he's doing mental math. Not numbers, distances, directions, island size. All from a bird's afternoon loop, D-loops. Historians still argue whether ancient navigators truly released birds mid-voyage or simply observed wild ones. But evidence from places like the Marshall Islands and Tuvalu suggests both methods were in play. And, well, when you're surrounded by 10 million square miles of water, any clue with wings starts to look like divine intervention. The birds get thicker as you near the reef. More species, more sound. You hear harsh cries, high, pitched chirps, low groans. It's like entering a feathered amphitheater. Each call has its meaning. Tua points to a low, flying brown bird, possibly a shearwater, and traces its line toward the northern end of the island. Lagoon entrance, he mutters. Apparently, these birds like to skim over calm water. And where there's calm water in a reef ring, there's a break, a pass you can steer through. It's a tactic centuries oldie, using bird flight paths not just to find land, but to figure out where and how to approach it. As the canoe cuts closer, The water changes hue. A deep navy turns turquoise, then jade green, then a milky blue. Fish flicker beneath you like sparkles in a moving painting. But your eyes stay skyward. You're scanning for bird clusters now. You find one, a rowdy gang of terns squabbling on a sandbar. Tua grunts, turns the rudder slightly. You mirror his motion. This is it, the entry point. The reef looms. Foam slaps at the rocks. For a second, you wonder if it's going to chew your canoe into driftwood. But then the swell flattens, a channel opens, and the canoe slides in as if on rails. Silence. No more crashing waves. Just soft water and chirping birds. You made it. The canoe drifts through the lagoon, its bottom brushing over coral heads that glow like ghostly brains. Fish dart beneath, brilliant as stained glass. And above, birds still circle. Some settle into treetop nests. Others dive for fish. One lands on the canoe's edge and stares at you with something like disdain. Like it's wondering why you took so long. You glance at Tua. He doesn't speak. He just watches the birds. And you realize this wasn't just a way to find land. It was a lesson in attention, in humility, in trusting nature's tiny messengers, even when they seem as fragile as leaves in the wind. You don't need stars tonight. You've got wings. And every beat of them is a step closer to knowing the way. Night falls again, wrapping the island in warm velvet darkness. The lagoon reflects what little moonlight filters through, but above the stars are back. Finally, the clouds have scattered, and the sky is so clear it feels like you could reach up and stir the constellations with your fingers. You lie flat on your back in the canoe, docked gently in the shallows now, and try to make sense of the sky. There's Orion's belt, or wait, is that it? You've seen it 1,000 times in city skylines and planetarium domes, but out here, it hits different. Out here, the stars don't twinkle for aesthetic. They serve a purpose. They move. They rise. They point. Tua sits beside you with a small stick and begins drawing in the sand. No high-tech laser pointer. Just finger, sand, sky. He sketches a horizon line, then dots above it. You realize he's not drawing stars, he's drawing paths. This is the art of sidereal navigation. Every star has a rising point, where it appears on the horizon, and a setting point on the opposite end. If you memorize where each bright star rises and sets, you can steer by them. That's it. No compass, no sextant, just head toward the star that rises slightly northeast of that coconut tree and sets behind the left side of that rock. Polynesians developed star compasses. Circular mental maps, divided by star paths, that allowed them to sail entire ocean basins without ever once looking at a map. Some had 32 or more star lines memorized, each representing a path between islands. And yes, it had to be memorized. No written charts. Everything lived in the navigator's head. You point out a particularly bright one low on the horizon. Tua nods, names it, and gives you its rising house, a directional zone between east and southeast. That's your home, islands, pointer. He says, like he's casually pointing out the way to the grocery store. Historians still debate whether these star compasses were uniform across Polynesia. Some traditions used specific constellations. Others focused on individual bright stars. But the principles were consistency, stars rise in consistent locations relative to Earth's rotation, and the ocean is your rolling observatory. Tua asks you to close your eyes. Feel the rise, he says. So you lie still, breathing slow, feeling the gentle sway of the canoe. He murmurs star names like a lullaby. Aldebaran, Sirius, Para, T. Each name comes with a direction, a route, a story. Some stars even belong to specific islands or lineages, passed down like heirlooms. And the best part, you don't need to see the stars to use them. This is the part that bends your brain. Polynesian navigators could sail using star paths, even on cloudy nights. Because they had the rhythm memorized, they knew which stars came next, how high each one should rise before the next took over. They used time and motion to anticipate the invisible. It's like using a playlist to guide your walk home in the dark. You know when the bass drops, You turn left. When the chorus hits, you're almost there. The canoe drifts a little, bumping softly against a mangrove root. You sit up, startled. Tua just grins. Now, he says, you remember the sequence. He points. Vega just touched the horizon. Then what? You stammer, trying to recall the chant he made you memorize. Vega, then capella, then something that sounded like the shark's eye. He nods. You sail east by Vega. Wait for capella. Turn slightly north. When shark's eye climbs high, you're near home. It's poetry. It's geometry. It's ancient science dressed in song. You gaze back up, letting your eyes relax until they blur slightly. That's when it happens. The stars stop looking like dots and start looking like trails. Roots, a highway in the sky. And you're not just a traveler anymore. You're a reader of the sea's oldest book. As the night deepens, the constellations roll slowly across the sky like sacred choreography. Your body rocks with the canoe. Your breath falls into rhythm with the swells, and your mind quiets. You don't need a compass. You don't even need the stars, as long as you remember their stories. But tonight, the stars have shown up, like old friends, and they're pointing home. Morning breaks soft and gold, and you're already paddling again. Gently now, not in a hurry. The island recedes behind you like a whispered dream. The birds growing quieter. The cloud that once revealed its presence now drifting into anonymity with the others. You glance down, and the ocean stares back with its kaleidoscope of blues. But it's not just pretty, it's code. You'd always assumed the ocean was one color, maybe a couple, if you got poetic about it. But now, under Tua's guidance, you start noticing shifts. Pale turquoise here, deep sapphire there, and wait, is that olive green? Suddenly, you're reading the sea the way he taught you to read stars and gradients. Polynesians knew that color changes in water weren't just artistic. They were diagnostic. Water clarity, depth, and the type of seabed beneath. Coral, sand, lava rock, all affect what color you see from above. It's like the ocean is covered in invisible street signs, each written in a different shade of blue. Tua leans over the canoe, pointing at a section of sea that looks like smoky teal. Reef, he says, then gestures to a darker patch that seems to go on forever. Deep trench. Finally, a pale, almost ghost, white area shimmering just ahead. Lagoon entry. From another island, long gone. Historians still wrestle with how precise these interpretations were. Some argue the knowledge was mostly intuitive and localized, specific to certain families or islands. Others insist navigators could recognize lagoon types and reef configurations from miles away, using only color. Either way, you're quickly learning that the ocean isn't empty. It's detailed, mapped by hue. As the canoe glides forward, you try to categorize every patch of color. Some transitions are sharp, like shifting from indigo to cobalt in a single stroke. Others are gradual, gradients that pulse with subtlety. Your eyes strain at first, then adjust. You start to see things before Tua even points them out. That chalky light, blue shimmer, shallow sandbar, that mossy undertone, a bed of seagrass, that deep bottled green. A reef covered in algae. It's no longer water to you. It's terrain. And then there's the glow. Just after midday, when the sun sits high and burns down into the water like a spotlight, something strange happens. A section of ocean ahead glows faintly. Not white, not yellow, but a muted, silvery gleam. Tua whispers the term, tilapa, again, and you realize this is a cousin of that fabled underwater lightning. Some say the glow is the result of sunlight reflecting off underwater sandbanks and reefs. Others swear it's a visual echo of land energy. Something electromagnetic, something wild. Still others argue it's just a trick of the eye. But every navigator you talk to treats it as gospel. Tua adjusts course slightly. The glow fades. He drifts back. The glow returns, like a laser pointer hidden beneath the sea. You learn quickly that the best time for reading ocean color is midday, when the sun is straight overhead and you get the full palette without the interference of shadows or glare. Too early or too late, and the water lies. But right now, it's honest. You use this window like a new sense, reading every tint like braille for the eyes. Tua throws out occasional challenges. What's that? How deep is this? Until you're no longer answering with guesses, but with quiet, confident certainty. You've become fluent in the water's dialect of light. Later in the day, clouds return. The sea goes slate, gray for a moment, and all your pretty gradients vanish. But your mind keeps working. You remember what you just saw. You remember how the lagoon glowed, how the trench devoured light, how the reef hummed with color. Even blindfolded, you know where you are now. As the wind picks up and the sun begins to slip, the clouds break once more, just enough to reveal another stretch of sea glowing faintly ahead. Another landfall. Another unseen island, announcing itself through its shadow and shine. Tua doesn't speak. He knows you know. You paddle forward, following color instead of compass, and the sea, once unreadable, now opens like a softly illuminated book. Your waist, deep in the sea now, crouching at the side of the canoe, and you do something you never imagined would count as navigational science. You taste the water. It's more ritual than necessity at first. Tua motions for you to dip your fingers and try it. You obey, sticking one salt-encrusted knuckle into your mouth. The taste hits you. Brine, fish, sunlight, and something else. It's subtle, but it's there. Slightly less salty than yesterday. Maybe you're imagining things, but Tua nods knowingly. Freshwater nearby? You blink. Wait, what? Polynesians, it turns out, didn't just rid the sky in waves. They read the water itself, by taste. The salinity of ocean water can drop near river mouths, island outflows, or even underwater springs. These shifts, imperceptible to most, were cues to the trained palate. Navigators knew the taste of every region's ocean, like you know your morning coffee. It wasn't just about saltiness. Texture mattered too. Water near coral reefs often had a smoother, more oily feel, slick with microscopic plankton and natural oils. Water in deep channels. Colder, sharper, often tasting more metallic, as some described it. Tua uses the word buddy, and somehow you know what he means. Historians still argue whether this was a legitimate navigation tool or a side benefit of extreme familiarity. Some claim it's nonsense. After all, salinity levels fluctuate only slightly across vast areas. But others have documented navigators consistently using taste as part of their suite of tools, especially when nearing freshwater outflows or lagoon mouths. You take another taste, just to be sure. Yep, definitely different. Still salty, but softer. Tua confirms we're nearing an island with underground springs. You wouldn't be able to see them. But the sea knows. The canoe glides into a patch of water that's unusually calm, almost syrupy. No wind chop, no fizz, just gentle undulations, like the ocean exhaling in slow motion. You lean over and dip your whole hand in. The temperature is cooler here. Another clue. You start noticing these micro patterns more and more. A sudden temperature drop means deep water below. A foamy swirl often marks a meeting point of two currents. Even the way the surface sparkles can change. Fine glitter in shallow, shelly water. Coarse glint in areas where the waves are more aggressive. Then comes the weird part. Tua asks you to close your eyes, swirl the water with your hand, and describe the feel. You hesitate, because what does that even mean? But you try. This patch. Smooth, the last one. Prickly like static. Two nods. Plankton bloom. Shallow reef. You're flabbergasted. He's tasting marine biology with his palms. These are the kinds of clues you'd need if everything else failed. If the stars were hidden. The birds missiled you. The clouds faked you out. The ocean has backup plans. Built-in redundancies, like a cosmic version of two-factor authentication. By midday, the wind dies completely, and the sail flaps lazily. You're dead in the water? Tua grins. Now you learn? You look at him, confused. Learn what? Dead reckoning, he says, and points to your own head. It's all in here now. With no stars, no wind, no movement. Your body, becomes the only tool left. You're told to recall your speed, direction, the time since the last course correction, the feel of the swells, even the angle of the sun at your back. You piece it together mentally. Left 10 degrees 3 hours ago. Slight southern swell. Tasted fresh water 30 minutes ago. You draw a mental map in your head. The funny part, it feels accurate. You feel it. This is where all those subtle lessons converge. You're no longer relying on one method. You're stacking cues. Color, temperature, birds, clouds, wind, and now, taste. It's a skill set born not of gadgets or apps, but of total presence. You glance overboard one more time, dip your hand, and taste again. Still soft, still sweet. Still telling you yes, you're close. Yes, you're right. And you smile, because somewhere in your brain, between the salt and the sunburn, you've started remembering the ocean, like an old friend's face. The sun dips low, and the ocean turns to molten bronze. You brace yourself, arms sore from a day of intermittent paddling and mental gymnastics. Tua doesn't say a word, just tightens a rope, adjusts a weight in the canoe, and then glances at you with a look that says, "Ready." You're not, but you nod anyway. Tonight's the test. Polynesian navigators didn't become wayfinders by reading a book or watching a couple of stars. They earned it through experience, the kind that could humble anyone. The traditional trial was simple: go out, find an island, and come back. No tools. No teacher. Just memory, instinct, and a very high chance of floating for days if you messed it up. This rite of passage, often referred to as trial by canoe, separates the dabblers from the deep knowers. Tua calls it Vate Moana, the deep sea experience. It's not for your ego. It's for humility. He steps back, gesturing for you to take the front position. The canoe is yours now. No stars tonight again. Of course, the ocean doesn't hand you cheat sheets. You breathe deep, call up everything you've learned, the angle of the last swell, the temperature shift, the taste of water 2 hours ago, the direction the birds flew at dawn. You check the way the hull is rocking, left to right, soft rhythm. That tells you the swell hasn't shifted. You pick a heading. Slightly northwest, compensating for that cross. Current Tua made you memorize 2 days ago. You speak it aloud. Tua gives a single nod. Permission granted. The canoe moves forward with every paddle stroke. The island behind you fades into a memory, and you are now truly alone with the ocean. There's no panic, just hyper-awareness. Every motion of the canoe matters. Every shift in the wind tells a story. You remember what Tua said earlier that morning. The ocean will ask questions. Answer slowly. Historians still argue about how accurate these trials were. Some claim many voyages were lost and only the lucky ones returned. Others say the training was so comprehensive that failure was rare. But one thing is certain, it took decades to become a master navigator. Lifetimes, really. Because the ocean keeps rewriting the test. The hours stretch. Your arms ache. You chant the star names under your breath, even though you can't see them. You hum the rhythm of the waves, trying to keep track of the distance you've traveled. You remember the taste of the water, and how it told you you were near a spring. You calculate backwards from there. Then comes the silence. A kind of silence that's not just about sound. It's the silence of doubt. You second, guess your heading. The swell feels different. Did you veer too far north? Was the current stronger than you thought? You pause the canoe, letting it drift. You close your eyes and feel everything: your heartbeat, the roll of the sea, the way your toes grip the canoe's edge. Then, there it is. The swell you were riding has shifted slightly right. It's subtle, but your body catches it. You correct course. Just a touch. And suddenly, the canoe breathes easier. The balance returns. You're still on course. Hours pass. Tua says nothing. He sits still, just watching. This part is yours. Then, a shape on the horizon. At first it looks like a smudge, but it holds steady as the sun begins its long dive into the ocean. You did it. You found the island. It's not a movie moment. There's no applause, no triumphant music, just your tired hands, your sore back, and the profound realization that everything you've been learning has worked. That your brain and body, without tech, without stars, have guided you across open ocean. You guide the canoe into the lagoon. The water calms, the breeze smells of cooked fish and coconut, and Tua finally breaks his silence. You didn't die, he says. You laugh half from relief, half from disbelief. That's the whole point of the trial. Not just to find your way, but to realize you're capable of becoming the way. Of holding knowledge so ancient and powerful, it overrides fear. And the next time someone asks how you got here, you'll say, I tasted the sea, I watched the birds, I listened to the waves, and I remembered. You sleep hard that night, curled up under the stars, salt crusting your eyelashes, and your dreams filled with wave rhythms and star names whispered in Tua's voice. By morning, your muscles ache like they've been rewired, but your mind feels sharp, almost too sharp, like you've absorbed something electric from the sea. Now Tua wants to talk about dead reckoning. You groan, because let's be honest, it sounds like math in a canoe. And it kind of is. But it's also the invisible backbone of everything you've been doing. The silent ledger your brain has been keeping this whole time. No compass. No sextant. No paper chart. Just your internal GPS calibrated by memory, time, and feel. Dead reckoning is the art of knowing where you are based on where you've been. You start from a known position. Say, the island you left this morning. Then, you track your heading, speed, time, and any environmental changes along the way. If done right, you can estimate your current location with shocking accuracy. Tua sketches a line in the sand departure point, heading angle, estimated speed, elapsed time. Then he adds corrections, current drift, crosswinds, swell interference. You stare at it. It looks like geometry got lost at sea. But here's the twist. You've already been doing it. Every time you felt a shift in swell or noticed birds changing course, you were adjusting. Each time you remembered when you last saw the sun or tasted fresher water, you were logging distance. Your brain has been running this equation on autopilot. Historians love to dissect how Polynesian navigators pulled this off. Some say they kept time using chance, repeating lines at fixed rowing speeds to calculate minutes past. Others argue they used their heartbeats, or even the slosh of water in the hull, as makeshift metronomes. The most skilled navigators, they didn't count. They felt it. Tua asks you to try it now. Close your eyes. No peeking. He wants you to tell him, based on memory alone, how far you've come and what direction you've drifted. You shut your eyes and sink into stillness. First, you remember the heading, west by north. Then the speed, moderate paddle pace, maybe 3 knots. Time, about 2 hours. Then came the current, strong from the south, so you drifted slightly northward. You sketch a mental line, then adjust it. Another current, another correction. You guess your position and describe it aloud. Tua throws a coconut at you, not in anger, but in approval. Close enough to land, he says. Wouldn't die. High praise. Dead reckoning is risky, though. One wrong assumption, and your estimate starts drifting off course exponentially. That's why Polynesians didn't rely solely on it. It was their invisible compass, yes, but always checked against the birds, the waves, the wind. There's a fringe theory that some navigators may have even mapped ocean swells the way medieval traders mapped desert oses, memorizing the feel of routes rather than landmarks. Whether that's true or just wishful thinking, you're beginning to understand how that level of mastery might be possible. And it's not just physical skill, it's mental resilience. To sit in a canoe for days, eyes scanning the horizon, mind always calculating, adjusting, checking, not with anxiety, but with clarity. That's the mark of a real wayfinder. Later in the day, you practice more. Tua spins the canoe in place, blinds you with a bandana, then asks you to reorient. You listen to the swell. You feel the sun on your cheek. You remember the angle of that last wind gust, and you point, not perfectly, but close, You're starting to feel like the ocean isn't a thing you move through, something you move with. It holds you, and you respond. Like a dancer not leading, but following the world's oldest choreography. By nightfall, you're exhausted again, not from paddling, but from thinking. Your mind hums with vectors and drift calculations. You've begun to sense when you're on course without even checking. A kind of low frequency certainty. A quiet compass in your bones. And for the first time, you realize that the secret to dead reckoning is being alive to everything. You're deep in the Pacific now. No land in sight, just swells stretching in every direction, like lazy muscle waves, flexing under a sky too wide for comfort. The kind of nothingness that could make a person go a little poetic or a little crazy. Probably both. But not you. Not anymore. Because now, when Tua points at the open ocean and says, "That way," you believe him. Not just with trust, but with understanding. Because this isn't empty space, it's a spider web of remembered journeys. The ancient Polynesians didn't just stumble across hundreds of islands by luck. They played oceanic hopscotch across one of the most formidable natural arenas on Earth. And you're beginning to understand how this section of your training is all about linking. It's not enough to find a place, you have to find the way between many. Polynesian navigation was a system of interconnected routes, like subway lines, with island chains serving as stations. Each leg of a journey reinforced the last. Each landfall offered new bearings, new stories, new clouds and birds and swells to memorize. You pass a cluster of barely there atolls, ringed skeletons of long dead volcanoes. Tua doesn't stop, he just gestures. "Checkpoint," he says, like it's a casual road sign on a highway that happens to be made of water. You're not landing here, but you're using it. Navigators would memorize the exact location of dozens, sometimes hundreds, of islands, even the uninhabitable ones. They were waypoints in a mental map. Miss one, and the whole web could unravel. But nail a few of them, and the rest fell into place. There's a legend that some master wayfinders could see. They're wrote as a string of floating islands, even in total darkness. They carried the Pacific in their heads like a living constellation. Not stars, but land. Historians still argue whether Polynesians had a form of pre-GPS geospatial mapping, or if it was more like a dynamic flowchart based on environmental signs. But what's undeniable is the scale. They colonized a triangle stretching from Hawaii to New Zealand to Easter Island, an area bigger than Russia, navigated without modern tools. And they didn't stop at the triangle. Recent evidence, like sweet potato DNA and chicken bones, hints they might have touched South America before Columbus even had a boat. Some fringe theories even suggest Polynesian words crept into Mapuche languages. Whether true or speculative, the idea isn't far-fetched when you consider how far they'd already gone. You paddle past one more atoll, barely visible above the waves, its reef frothing like a sleeping beast. You don't need to stop, you feel it. The swell angle confirms it. The watercolor confirms it. The taste in the air, the birds overhead, the cloud that's been tailing you for hours. They all whisper, "Yes, this is one of the links." And here's the kicker, it wasn't just the elite doing this. Entire families migrated using these routes. Grandparents, toddlers, pigs, bananas. These weren't weekend voyages. They were one-way tickets to new worlds, powered by knowledge passed down orally through chance, training, and lots of near misses. Tua tells you about his grandfather, who once led a fleet from Samoa to Tokelau, then to Tuvalu, guided only by bird routes and a 6-day-old stick chart burned into memory. No written notes, just rhythm and trust. You ask why they didn't just stay on one island. He raises an eyebrow. "Too easy," he says. Then, more seriously, islands change. Storms come. You must know more than one way home. There's something poetic about that. Navigation not as conquest, but as contingency. Not, how do I get there? But how many ways can I come back? You spend the rest of the day rehearsing the mental links. This swell leads to that atoll, which sits northeast of another with banana-shaped reefs. If you drift too far south, you'll pass through a bird corridor instead of a fish one. Adjust. Correct. Remember, it's not just memory, it's layered spatial story making. Each new route builds on the last. Each crossing reaffirms the whole. As the sun begins to set and the ocean turns violet, you look around and feel strangely at ease. You're in the middle of nowhere, but it doesn't feel that way. It feels like you're in the middle of somewhere. A somewhere that exists not on paper, but in your bones. This isn't just travel. It's inheritance. It's legacy. It's a living network of oceanic memory. And you, against all odds, are now part of it. The canoe rocks gently beneath you as morning creeps in, and for once, you're not focused on the swells or the stars. You're watching the water quietly, waiting for something big to move. Tua has told you today's lesson isn't about waves or clouds or birds. Today, it's about stories. Not bedtime tales, but the kind that shaped migrations and lives. Legends filled with shark gods, singing whales, and islands that only appear if you believe in them hard enough. You think he's kidding. He's not. Polynesian navigation was as much mythic as it was methodical. Oral traditions served as both memory palace and philosophical compass. When logic failed, when the stars were gone, the birds were elsewhere, and the swells just refused to make sense. Navigators turned to the stories, and some of those stories, they were told by animals. A ripple breaks the surface ahead, then vanishes. Another, bigger this time. You lean forward, barely breathing. Tua holds up a hand, stilling the canoe. A second later, it surfaces. A whale, massive, silent, otherworldly. You watch it breach, exhale, then glide beneath your canoe with terrifying grace. You want to move, but Tua shakes his head. It's fine, he says. They know the way. It's not just poetic license. Ancient navigators often watched whales to determine migratory routes. Some species, like humpbacks, follow consistent seasonal patterns. If you knew where and when they passed, you could use them like aquatic road signs. The path of a whale might lead to a reef, or an island, or a hidden lagoon. Sometimes, just seeing one confirmed you weren't as far off course as you feared. Historians still debate the extent to which whale behavior directly influenced navigation, but stories abound of voyages corrected after a chance encounter with a pod, or of songs heard through the hull, deep, echoing signals that changed the course of a journey. Whale song travels for hundreds of miles underwater. It's like nature's own sonar network, a low-frequency call and response between giants. You swear you can feel the vibrations now, tingling your bones as the whale passes beneath. But it's not just whales. Tua begins to chant softly, a story about a navigator who got lost for weeks and was guided home by a shark. Not a metaphor, a literal shark. Some listen to swells, he says. Some listen to sharks. You raise an eyebrow, he shrugs. They circle before land. That's not even the strangest part. There's a practice, now mostly legend, of reading shark tooth patterns in sand to predict currents. The triangular shapes supposedly mimicked water flow, and in some versions of these tales, certain shark species are considered guardians of routes between specific islands. You remember reading about the Fijian god Dakawaka, a shark deity who protected sailors from sea monsters and misfortune, as long as they showed proper respect. Some canoe prows still bear shark motifs, talismans carved with the hope of guidance or mercy. And then there's the flying fish. They erupt from the water in sudden bursts, skimming across the surface like skipping stones. Navigators watch their trajectories for clues about currents and predators. Even more, they listen for them. Wings slapping against the hull in the dark of night could signal a shift in wind or approaching land. In one legend, a school of flying fish showed the way to Rapa Nui. All these stories, whales, sharks, birds, fish, they weren't just myths. They were memory aids, pattern recognition in disguise. Science wrapped in folklore. Historians often struggle with this blend. Was it spiritual metaphor or practical observation? The answer, as always, is both. You're starting to understand that the line between data and story gets pretty thin when your life depends on knowing which way to paddle. You spend the afternoon in silence watching. A pod of dolphins passes, then a flock of birds, then what might be a sea turtle surfacing for air. Each one tells you something, if not about direction, then about timing, about season, about what the sea is trying to say today. And sometimes, the stories just help you endure. When the ocean goes blank, and the stars vanish, when your legs are cramping, and you've forgotten which bird flies home. Before sunset, a well-timed legend can be the thing that keeps your hands moving on the paddle. A whispered chant about a wayfinder who lost everything, but still made it. A reminder that others got through this exact moment, and that maybe, so will you. As the sun sets behind you, the whale reappears one last time. Far off now, just a silhouette. Tua touches the side of the canoe, and you feel the vibrations in your skin. They remember, he says. And you know, somehow, that he means more than just the whales. Night again. Your favorite time now. It used to unsettle you. The Black Sea, the absence of reference points, the long hours where stars vanished behind clouds, and your mind drifted toward every possible wrong turn. But now, you've come to appreciate this stretch of silence. It's where the real test begins. And tonight, everything goes quiet. No wind, no birds, no whales or flying fish. Just the subtle creak of the canoe, the slow rhythm of your own breathing, and the occasional splash of an oar. Even the swell has softened, becoming a sluggish pulse instead of the rhythmic bounce you've come to rely on. You glance up. The sky has closed shop again. Not a single star in sight. You're in a vacuum, soundless, windless, starless. Nothing left but the knowledge inside you. Tua lies back, hands behind his head, unbothered. Now we see if you feel it, he says. You swallow hard. This is it. You sit upright, close your eyes, and begin the checklist. The last heading you took northwest. The wind was southeast, light but steady. You had followed a pod of dolphins about 3 hours ago, and the water temperature was warmer then. There was a slight current to the north. You've compensated, probably. But now, nothing is moving. This is the test the ocean loves to give. Stillness. It robs you of sensory feedback and asks, do you still trust yourself? You try not to panic. Instead, you focus inward. You rock side to side, lightly, testing the swell. There's something there, faint, barely a whisper. It's coming from the left. No, wait. It shifted. Now it's behind you. It's a cross swell. You adjust your heading by just a touch, trimming the sail slightly to align with what you think is the dominant direction. No confirmation. Just your instincts. Historians call this kind of decision-making embodied cognition. The idea that your body stores experience, not just your brain. Muscles remember. Your skin notices patterns. Ancient navigators weren't just memorizing. They were becoming extensions of their environment. Tua isn't helping. He's not supposed to. This is your moment. You sit still, trying to sense movement. The canoe rolls lazily, and then it happens. A sudden dip to the right. A swell from an angle you didn't expect. You feel it deep in your spine. You adjust again. Slight angle. Course corrected. Then comes the moment you've dreaded all night, the doubt. What if you've been veering off course for hours? What if that whale was a distraction? Or the current has reversed? Or you're imagining all of it? There's no compass to consult? No chart to check? Only your accumulated memory of days and days at sea. You whisper the chants Tua taught you. The ones that mark time, direction, position. They ground you. Not because they offer coordinates, but because they remind you. You are not the first to face this moment. Every navigator in history has had to sit in silence and decide to keep going. So you do. You paddle slowly, quietly. You eat half a dried banana. You count breaths. You recite star names in the order they would have risen had the sky cooperated. You replay the swell angles you've felt all day. stacking them in your mind like puzzle pieces. And then, just as your hope begins to sputter, a breeze. It brushes past your face like the softest hand, lifting a few strands of hair. You sit up straight. It comes again. Stronger this time from the east. You adjust the sail. The canoe responds with a grateful groan, like it's been waiting for this. And now, a break in the clouds. A single star peeks through. Then another. And another. They sparkle like shy signals, checking if you're still watching. You spot Sirius, the bright one, the old friend. You whisper a thank you to no one and everyone. As the wind picks up, the canoe begins to hum, and your heading aligns perfectly with the star path. The swell agrees. The birds return in the distance. Even the silence gives you a nod of approval. You passed the test. It wasn't about direction. It was about trust. About listening when nothing speaks. Feeling when everything's still. And knowing, deep in your bones, that forward is still forward, even when the sea goes silent. The island appears like a secret being told softly. First, it's just a change in the clouds. A subtle thickening, a vertical stretch. Then, a darker smudge beneath the cloud shelf. Then come the birds swerving low and purposeful. Then, unmistakably, the scent. Sweet, green, alive. It's your final destination, the place Tua called Matangi Nui, or Big Breeze. A name that now feels oddly fitting, given how this whole journey has depended on winds you couldn't see and clues you had to feel. You guide the canoe through the surf, the hull skipping gently into a quiet lagoon. Palms line the shore, their fronds fluttering like hands waving you in. You don't cheer. You don't shout. You just breathe. You made it. But this last leg isn't about arrival. It's about inheritance. Tua steps ashore first, silent as ever, and begins gathering stones. Not for a fire, but for a compass. He arranges them in a rough circle, each one representing a cardinal direction, but not the kind you're used to. These aren't based on magnetic poles, but on memory, star paths, wind routes, swell origins, and animal migrations. He gestures for you to add one. You place it carefully, aligning it with the swell you rode in on. It feels more permanent than a signature. This is how wayfinding knowledge is passed on. Not with paper or recordings, but with repetition, embodiment, ceremony. You don't graduate from this. There's no diploma. Just the quiet nod of someone who knows you've seen what they've seen. Tua finally speaks. You're not a wayfinder yet, he says. You nod. I know. But now you can learn the real way, he adds. The long way. Because wayfinding isn't something you conquer. It's something you join. A living tradition. A discipline of noticing, of remembering, of honoring the sea not as obstacle, but as storyteller. Historians often miss this part, the emotional tether. They dissect the methods, debate the stick charts, argue over bird paths and whale songs. But what you've learned out here is quieter, and maybe harder to explain. It's not about where you're going, it's about how you go. You think back on the moments that changed you, the stick chart's odd wisdom, the Dalapa glow beneath the hull, the birds as guides, the cloud columns, the taste of salinity, the trust of dead reckoning, and the long, silent trial when all went dark. Each piece mattered. Each one formed a constellation. Not in the sky, but in your mind. Tua begins to sing. It's not a song you recognize. It's in a language that predates your own, but you understand it anyway. It's a farewell, a welcome, a reminder that you are always in motion, always surrounded by signs, and always being asked to pay attention. The canoe rests in the shallows, its hull still wet from the journey. The stars reappear above you, no longer strangers. You lie back on the beach, the wind soft across your skin, and feel the ocean settle. The path is still out there, unmarked, unwritten, but it's real and now. Part of it lives in you. A word count 1 zo15. Wind down coming next. Wind down 300 words. The waves hush now, lapping at the shore with a sleepy rhythm. Overhead, the stars blink slowly, like tired eyes closing one at a time. The air is warm, filled with the scent of wood smoke and salt. and the canoe creaks faintly as it rocks in the shallows, finally at rest. You're stretched out in the sand, body unwinding into the earth, mind finally softening after so many days of vigilance. The journey has ended, but its motion lingers, like the echo of a lullaby, or the sway of a hammock long after you've climbed out. You've crossed a vast ocean without compasses, without maps, and sometimes without even stars. You've learned to read waves with your spine, wind with your skin, birds with your eyes, and direction with your heart. You've listened to water sing and clouds whisper, and in their voices you found your own. Now, everything slows. The sky deepens into midnight blue, clouds thinning to gossamer. A breeze brushes over your face like a mother's hand. Somewhere nearby, a night bird calls once, then goes silent again. The sea, too, quiets, content, as if it knows its stories have been heard. You're not drifting anymore. You're floating, safely moored to something ancient, vast, and deeply familiar. Let your breath match the waves now. In, like the rising swell. Out, like the long exhale of foam on sand. Nothing to track. Nothing to decide. Just the rhythm of the ocean, and the long memory of a voyage you'll never forget. You're home, Voyager. Sleep well.